Holy City Center Radio, it is episode 90, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, February 27th, 2023. Hope y'all had a great weekend. I had an awesome one. It was my birthday weekend, and my parents are in town, as I've mentioned. Had a great time celebrating with them. It's been a long time since I've been able to be with my parents on my birthday, since they, live elsewhere, and since I've moved here, I just haven't been able to coordinate a trip home. And but now that they are retired, they have more time to be able to make trips, and this one just worked out with all our schedules and everything. And yeah, it's been great having them here, and it was really nice to have them on my birthday, and be able to spend time with them here in Charleston. We had lots of fun. We decided to do a few things. So my mom and I went to the Edge Tattoo, which is this shop on James Island. It's right in front of that big building that's been a lot of different businesses. It was White Duck Taco for a little while. It was a Charleston Sports Pub for a little bit. It was most recently the Roost, which just closed and is going to become a Locals, the sushi place that's based in Mount Pleasant. But it's right in front of that little building there. That building was a tattoo shop previous to this one. But yes, the Edge, Ricky Miller is the owner and the main artist there. He's hired a few more people since they've opened. He did both. He did my last tattoo as well as my mom's last tattoo, which was her first. We went together the last time they were here visiting, and it was really cool to go with my mom and have that memory and experience with her that we could share. And she decided, when they were planning their trip for my birthday, she said, "Hey, I know something we could do for your birthday. We could get tattoos again," since we both had talked about other ones that we want. And so I thought that was a pretty good idea. So we went there and had a great experience, as always. And I should mention that Ricky, as the artist, and his business, The Edge Tattoo, are both up for Best of Charleston awards. I will certainly be voting for them and him individually. And yeah, he does a real good job. He's nice. He's talkative. Make sure you're comfortable, answers all your questions and all that good stuff. So I've been really happy the two times that we've gone. So that was really fun to be able to go with my mom again and have a special birthday, as it was my 40th. If you didn't hear that, just pretend or if you did hear that, pretend you heard a much younger age. So it was special to have to be able to do that. And it was great. Another great experience. We also watched the UConn men's and women's basketball teams win. So that was nice on my birthday to see my alma mater, both teams win. And of course, my parents are big fans of the basketball teams as well. So it's always fun to watch games with them like we used to when I was a kid living at home. And of course, when I was at college there as well. So already a great day, but it got even better. I also forgot to mention when I got up in the morning, my parents had a happy birthday sign and a balloon, which was nice. A nice little surprise in the morning when I got up. For dinner, we decided to go to Rancho Lewis, which is John Lewis, if you're familiar with his barbecue place. This is kind of like a Tex-Mex, Southwestern type cuisine that's over on the King Street extension where Workshop used to be. They've taken over that whole section. Edmonds Brewing Company is still there on the other side, of course, but great food as to be expected. We all enjoyed our different meals that we got. I got the Christmas burrito, which was super tasty. Highly recommend if you haven't been to Rancho Lewis getting over there. They've got all sorts of good food, and they also look like they had a pretty extensive drink menu as well. A lot of people were out enjoying the warm-ish weather. It was a little overcast on Saturday, but still we were sitting outside with my parents' dog, and we weren't too chilly. It felt fine. So we've been certainly enjoying this weather, especially them, since it's snowing back in Connecticut where they still live. So came home. Fun didn't stop there. My parents also surprised me with some desserts. Of course, as many people know, love ice cream, and I have plenty of ice cream to talk about in this little the front part of the show here. They had gotten me, first of all, they got me a cookie cake from my friends over at Eat Me Cookies. You probably remember Beth and Maddie. How could you not? When I interviewed them on this podcast last year. So they got me one of those. It was super tasty, of course. We didn't eat the whole thing. They're very big cookie cakes, but it was very good and will continue to be over the next few days as I pack on the pounds between that and some ice cream as well, because they also surprised me with the Life Raft Treats not fried chicken ice cream. If you're not familiar with it, you must be living under a rock. Life Raft Treats makes these delicious ice creams, and Cynthia Wong, who is the owner, and was, I believe it, yeah, James Beard nominated pastry or dessert chef, or chef, I guess, period. I forget the exact title, but there's a reason she was nominated for a James Beard Award. Her ice creams are delicious and super unique because they're made. She has some that are made in to look like different things. So, for instance, this looks like you have a bucket of chicken with like fried chicken drumsticks, and it's all ice cream. It's all edible. It's really cool. I highly recommend you not only check out her Instagram so you can see these incredible creations she makes, but also order some because they're super tasty too. So that was great. Just awesome. Couldn't really ask for much else. A great birthday, and lots of fun. And also got a pretty unique present for my brother and his family, which is really cool. I like Marvel movies, and I've always liked Star Wars as well. Although I'm not as big into Star Wars as I am like the Marvel stuff, and I've purchased some of those little Funko Pop characters you've probably seen in stores and things, of some of my favorite shows and movies and things like that. And so my brother decided a pretty unique gift that he came across, Hasbro, which creates action figures and those starting lineup figurines for sports fans. You may remember those, but they have a new offer where basically you take a picture of your face, and your profile, and they'll basically, long story short, they create an action figure where they'll put your head on the body of like a famous, you could do like a stormtrooper from Star Wars, or some of the characters from the Marvel universe. I think they have like Power Rangers and some other things. So really fun and unique. I can add my own action figure to my collection, which will be really fun. And it was a really unique and great idea. So I love that. So just an awesome birthday. Got lots of good wishes from folks on social media and text messages and things, from friends and strangers who just follow Holy City Center. So I really appreciated that. I was not looking forward to this birthday. Just, wasn't really broken up about it, but it's no fun to be out of your 30s and be like, oh my gosh, but everybody made it really great. And then on Sunday, laid low with my folks, but I did, for a little bit, decide to go to the Captain's Comics Expo in Mount Pleasant. Captain's Comics is over in West Ashley, and they every year hold this like comic, think of like Comic-Con, but obviously on a smaller scale, set here in Charleston. There's vendors, they have people that show up, customers for the festival that show up in cosplay. Everyone looks awesome. And my favorite part is seeing like younger kids, whether it's high school, middle school, or younger, like dressed up, and everyone like complimenting each other, just like a super inclusive and friendly atmosphere. I can't tell you how many times when I was walking around hearing people go, "Oh my gosh, your costume's so great. Can I take a picture with you?" And I don't know, it just warmed my heart to just be in an area where everyone is just having fun, being supportive, and it just is really cool. Fandoms sometimes can be goofy and silly, of course, and I know can be a little nerdy, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's good fun. Anytime someone can rally behind something, whether it's a movie or comic or a sports team, even if everyone's on the same page, of course, and less so with the sports world a lot of the time, but it's fun to see everybody just rallying around something and being excited and having fun. And it's cool to see like a group setting like that. So great birthday weekend. Certainly no complaints on my end. And I hope you all had a great weekend as well. So enough about me. Let's get into the news. But first, don't forget, Best of Charleston final voting is underway. We've got about a week or so left of voting. So head to head to best.charlestoncitypaper.com, and you can vote for all of your Charleston favorites. There's tons of categories. You can vote in as many or as few as you want. I encourage you to vote as much as you have time to do, because this is a chance for your favorite places around town to win an award and up their profile and things like that. It's awesome. As someone who's been nominated and won awards, it's a good feeling, of course, but it also helps get your name out there. Those first few years I was nominated, it really boosted the profile of Holy City Center, because people who hadn't heard of it were like, "Hey, what is this?" when they're looking in the city paper. So Go vote for your favorites, whether they're already a well-known entity or someone that's up and coming. It's fun to vote, and like I said, it can really help out some of those smaller businesses that are just trying to boost their profile a little bit. And if you vote for Holy City Sinner in one of the 4 categories I'm in, I would really appreciate that as well. All right, let's get going. Murdaugh murder trial continued, of course, on Friday. After I recorded, nothing really crazy had come out in the cross-examination. Obviously, things got a little testy between the prosecution and Alec, but I think we pretty much covered the gist of what happened on the last podcast. One thing I didn't mention was that during this, while Alec was answering questions, whether it was from the defense or prosecution, he kept kind of laying on the charm and the I'm a family man kind of shtick, real heavy. He was calling, using like nicknames for friends and family members and stuff. He kept saying Paul for Paul and Mags for Maggie. Now these very well could have been nicknames that he frequently used for those two, but it was just so clear what he was doing because in interviews and phone calls that were, from his jail, when he, they through Freedom of Information Act, some local outlets were able to get his jail phone calls between him and anyone, but specifically him and his surviving son Buster. You know, I've never heard him use nicknames, even shorting Maggie to Mags. Like I couldn't remember ever hearing that, and I certainly don't remember him ever saying Paul for Paul. It was clear he was directed to do that. Like, hey, when you're on the stand, make sure you're using nicknames and stuff. Show that, would someone who murdered his wife and child be using these cutesy little nicknames that he always used? Wouldn't he be separating himself? It was just clear. Again, did he do it? Did he not do it? Whatever your opinion is, even if he didn't do it, it was so clear that that was his direction. And when something is so painfully obvious that that's what you were directed to do, I don't think it helps at all. So I didn't touch on that in the last episode, so I wanted to say that. I also wanted to say Netflix came out with their 3-part docu-series about the family and everything that's gone on with them, from the 2 murders here to also these financial crimes and the boat accident and Gloria Satterfield's death and Stephen Smith's death as well. I don't think there was anything super new in the series. My parents and I watched it. I don't think they really had any groundbreaking information or surprises of any real revelations or anything. But if you want like a nice, well, not nice isn't the right word, but like a good recap of what's happened, where you get a good amount of details of just the whole scope of this thing. These documentaries, there's one on HBO as well. They're pretty good. They'll give you a background on everything that's happened and give you like a solid, basis if you were to, talk about this case or just to get a grip on it. So I wouldn't say it's again, nothing groundbreaking, nothing shocking. You don't need to run out and see it immediately. But if you are confused about some of the things that have happened in the past or just want to recap, I think it does a good job of doing that. It also does a really good job of talking to some of the victims, whether they're the victims financially or the kids who were involved in the boat crash, and their family members and everything they've gone through in relation to that accident or the financial crimes and just this whole process. It really humanizes them if you've never seen interviews of them, and it provides a good background for them as well as some things you didn't know about the Murdaugh family. So in that sense, I recommend it. But again, nothing you need to rush out and see immediately. But nonetheless, I think it was pretty good. As far as other news, this broke late on Friday, but Murdaugh was actually arrested on February 24th. Again, that was Friday. He was arrested. Yes, he is in jail, but this can happen. You can still be charged with other crimes while you're in jail and be technically arrested for them. It was for a misdemeanor warrant, and it was issued by Carlton County. So the Carlton County Sheriff's Office announced this on Friday evening. He was being held for that, obviously already in jail, like I mentioned. They haven't officially said what this new misdemeanor charge is, but the speculation and rumors that have been out there is it has something to do with contraband in the jail. Specifically, it's been implied that it had to do with that incident a couple weeks ago where his sister handed him a book. It was like a John Grisham novel. Handed him that. He brought it back to his jail cell. Somehow authorities got wind of it, but not until after he had already brought it back to his cell. And then they took it from him because it was deemed contraband. And it has to go through proper channels. Obviously, it can't just be handed to him in court for several reasons. One, of course, is maybe she was put something in there that he shouldn't have, whether it be a weapon or drugs. Since he's apparently addicted to opiates, which he's sneaking him drugs. So that, from what I've heard, nothing like that. It seems like innocently enough was just a book, but still not allowed. So that's what I've seen out there. It's not like an official report. That's more of like some of the blogs and things like that. But it would make sense that would be the charge, since that's something that did in fact occur that we were already aware of. So we'll see officially. It will come out, I would imagine, on Monday. This came out on Friday, so when it comes to media and things like that, the police aren't always, whether it's their information officer or what have you, they don't always have the details ready to go. So we should know on Monday what it was. But I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what's another misdemeanor, right? He's already facing so many accusations and different crimes. So what's another one, I guess, right? So that's the latest on that. Court will resume today. Like I said, Monday we'll see, what happens there, and then what also happens in court. All right, moving on to a story out of North Charleston. City and state leaders are looking into the possibility of removing North Charleston schools from the Charleston County School District. They have been criticizing CCSD's efforts to improve low-performing schools in the city. Mayor Keith Summy told reporters back on February 22nd that the city's legal department has begun researching what would be required for the state's third largest city to form its own school district. The same day of Summy's announcement, State Representative Marvin Pendarvis, a Democrat from North Charleston, filed a state house bill that calls for the formation of the, quote, North Charleston School District. It would also ask for the abolition of Charleston County Constituent School District Number 4, which is mostly responsible for like student transfer requests and disciplinary issues. So CCSD's focus, according to North Charleston, seems to be on its schools and facilities in more affluent communities, such as those east of the Cooper and west of the Ashley. This was what Pendarvis also said, while many of North Charleston schools continue to show poor academic performance. The district, in response, has asked for better collaboration between North Charleston and the school district, saying that the mayor has not reached out to them directly since February of 2022. So it's been a year, they claim, since Mayor Summy has even reached out to them to discuss these things. And then after about a year of discussing, he tells reporters they're looking into removing North Charleston schools from the school district. So they're saying, hey, why don't you come to us? A spokesperson for CCSD said that the district calls on Mayor Sumny to address his concerns directly with CCSD leadership so that adults can avoid negative outcomes for students, parents, and educators. So at this point, it seems it's just an exploratory thing from the city's perspective, and obviously Representative Pendarvis, his bill is just been filed. It hasn't been voted on or anything like that. So this is very much in the preliminary stages, and we'll see what happens from here. Speaking of schools, there is this law you may have heard of called the disorderly conduct law that is used in schools. Well, the use of the state's law, which is used in K through 12 public schools, which has led to thousands of school children being referred to prosecution, may finally be history, according to the Post and Courier report. A Fourth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals panel upheld a lower court ruling from February 22nd that found the statute is unconstitutionally vague when it applied in schools, and it deprives students of their 14th Amendment due process rights. Unsurprisingly, a spokesman for South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson said the office respectfully disagreed with the majority opinion. So this disorderly conduct law, it doesn't necessarily target schools or students, but it has been used in them. It allows police to charge anyone who is, quote, in a grossly intoxicated condition in a public place, and anyone who otherwise conducts himself or herself in a disorderly or boisterous manner. Using obscene or profane language in public also constitutes disorderly conduct. So anything that police could say fit into that definition, they could arrest someone and charge them with this disorderly conduct law. So, since this has been in place, more than 3,800 young people have been referred to the state's Department of Justice, Department of Juvenile Justice, between 2015 and 2020 for the so-called disorderly conduct incidents at school. Looking into those numbers, something that likely won't shock you because this is how things operate in this state and country most of the time when it comes to anything involving crime. But black youths were charged with disorderly conduct for incidents in schools at roughly 7 times the rate of their white peers between 2015 and 2020, and this is all according to evidence submitted to the federal district court. No surprise there, big disparities as there usually is. So even more issues with this whole law that is being applied in schools. So the law does not distinguish criminally disorderly conduct from what someone may call like a garden variety conduct, which means officers could, what one judge wrote in his ruling, could deploy a glorified smell test, as was written. So they could use this smell test to determine if conduct is criminal. So again, court decided this is way too vague. You're leaving way too much in the hands of these police officers or those resource officers in schools, for instance, to determine if a kid who maybe is, just being a little disorderly is referred for any kind of criminal referral. No surprise when things are left vague like that and it comes down to the opinion of one person in that moment, that's when you start seeing those disparities between races when it comes to these laws being applied. Also in the ruling, the judge wrote, quote, a student's profanity-laced tirade during lunch is likely to violate both the disorderly conduct law and the school's internal code of conduct. But whether that student is scolded or arrested turns on the whims of a school resource officer, end quote. I agree with that right there. Based on the wording of the law, it's way too vague, way too easy to send a kid who probably doesn't deserve to go to like jail or be arrested or be referred for any kind of criminal prosecution. It's not good. And when you're seeing disparities, like I mentioned before, there's obviously something wrong. It's broken. So that's where we stand with that right now. The Attorney General can appeal. So this may not be done, but at the time, it appears that this whole disorderly conduct law, specifically as it relates to schools, is no longer going to be applied. And then we're going to end this episode with a pretty shocking report that I saw over the weekend in the state newspaper. Nearly 800 people have died in South Carolina jails and prisons between 2015 and 2021. And the state got this from a new report from researchers at the University of South Carolina School of Law. So these law students and their professor compiled data that showed 777 deaths across 52 facilities, including state-run prisons, local detention centers, and a juvenile detention facility from, again, 2015 to 2021. 777 deaths. Now, that seems like a lot to me. Why are so many people dying in our prisons and jails? We'll dive into those numbers. Maybe we'll get some more answers, but I think there's a lot of questions that still remain after this report. Facilities in Richland County were the site of 301 of those deaths, which was more than any other county. So obviously, they have the biggest issue. Of those 777 deaths statewide, 109 were people who hadn't even been convicted of a crime yet, but were awaiting trial. So just devastating to hear that. Of those 109, who knows how many were actually guilty and weren't. Not that guilty people deserve to die in jail, of course, but it's tragic regardless. But even more tragic that someone may have just not been able to get out of jail because they didn't have enough money to get bail, or maybe they were denied bail and they may not even been guilty and they end up passing away there. More than 500 of the deaths were attributed to medical reasons. Almost 90 were deaths by suicide. Deaths between white and black people were pretty evenly split, so this is an issue across the board, it seems, although black inmates died from violence in the facilities at a higher rate than white inmates, while white inmates were far more likely to die from drug-related incidents. No surprise in the violence part of things, whether now obviously some of that is just violence amongst inmates, but also we've seen some incidents in the news where they've died while being, restrained or what have you by members of the jail staff or police officers or whatever their official titles are. No surprise there. We see that before people are arrested as well, the big disparities between the races on that. Also, the numbers show that nearly 94% of the deaths analyzed in the report were among men, who represent 93% of people incarcerated after conviction in South Carolina. Age was also a key factor. In state prisons, 14% of people held are 55 years or older, and more than 60% of the deaths analyzed in the report were among people that were over 50 years old. So a lot of questions. Some stuff, like I said, makes sense based on trends we've seen. Not saying that that's good, obviously. And of course, it's expected that some of the deaths are going to be those that are a little bit on the older side, but that doesn't mean that these were natural or would have happened whether these folks were home or incarcerated. So a lot of questions. I was shocked just to see that number. I don't know if that's shocking to you, but in a 7-year span, seeing nearly 800 people die in jails seems excessive to me. This isn't something where you're like, oh yeah, sure. To me, that sounds like a lot. And I think we really, really need to look into why that is. What jail conditions, how are they being treated? And I know a lot of times people who are in jail don't get a lot of sympathy from the public, and understandably so, from those, especially those that have been convicted of crimes, violent crimes, murder, etc. I get it, but we should still be treating them like humans. And the people who haven't even been convicted of a crime yet but are stuck in jail, we need to be treating them like humans and making sure their conditions are livable, that they're not going to be subject to violence. And you have to keep them as safe as you can. That's part of the job of these prisons. So need to look into this more, see what are the causes of death. Are these things that can be prevented, and how can we protect people in our prisons? Again, I get it. Some of these folks aren't the most sympathetic people in the world, but they deserve to be treated like humans regardless. If you're interested in looking at more of the data and seeing the whole report, it is available online. I'll give you the link here in a moment. It's also going to be in the show notes, but it is at incarcerationtransparency.org/South Carolina. That'll do it for episode 90 of Holy City Center Radio. I hope you have a great rest of your week. I hope you are enjoying this new format of Holy City Center Radio that we kicked off at the beginning of the year. 3 episodes a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I fill you in on the latest news and information. We are gearing up to have some interviews again. I know it's been a little bit of a hiatus as we've transitioned to this new format. But the plan is absolutely to still have interviews. I've got a few people that I've talked to, just trying to work out some things on my end. Once I feel confident that we can do those interviews with the same quality as we've done before, we'll be up and running with those. So you'll be hearing from people in the community. Now, still, even in those episodes, still be filling you in on the latest news around Charleston and the state. So with that said, be sure to subscribe on whatever your favorite streaming platform is so you don't miss any episodes. And if you want to help out Holy City Center Radio and the website, you can do so in numerous ways. Please like the podcast, rate it, review it, whatever your platform allows you to do. Please do that. That helps me out immensely. I've already noticed an uptick in new subscribers and people commenting on the podcast. So I appreciate you all spreading the word and doing things like subscribing, rating, and reviewing. That's a big help as well. You can also go to holycitycenter.com/shop to pick up some merchandise, or go to patreon.com/holycitycenter to become a patron of Holy City Center. Thank you for listening. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins of LMC Sound System and the local podcast FMB Radio. Lindsay produces each and every episode of this podcast while also doing her own weekly podcast, which is up for a Best of Charleston award, and you should definitely vote for her. I also want to thank Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every episode of this podcast. And an even bigger thank you to my family, my parents who came down to visit. We've been having a great time, and as I said, made this an awesome birthday for sure. And to my brother and his family for the great gift, and for always being incredible as well. My sister-in-law Jamie and my niece and nephew Chase and Cameron. Miss them. Glad I was able to FaceTime and see them, but a big thank you to them as well for helping my birthday be even more special and just being awesome people all around. With that, I will leave you for now, but I will talk to you on Wednesday. I hope you have a great week, as I mentioned. And until then, good night and good luck.